Today's crime story is about a maid who tolerated abuse but threat of being sent home back triggered her to stab her employer's 70-years-old mother-in-law. There are lots of maids to send to work while they are still very young. It makes their job very difficult and tough, especially when they end up in the situations where they are being mistreated because they barely have anyone they can talk or relate to. These maids end up having to handle all sorts of jobs like looking after a kid, care for the elderly, cleaning house, and cooking, and they do all these without any official qualifications. Most of the time their stay is basically illegal, because their agencies often cheat with their ages numbers. So they meet the minimum age requirement for maids in the destination country. Same something happened in Zin Marnowe's case. Zin Marnowe was born in Myanmar in 2001. We don't know a lot about her early life, other than this, that she came from a very poor family, and that's a common story for many maids. Zinmar was 17 years old when Hay registered her with the agency to work as a maid, so she can earn some money and support her family. Agency changed her birth date to make her 23, which is the minimum age for working as a maid in Singapore. Zin Marnowe lands in Singapore on 5th of January. After she arrived in Singapore, Zin worked for 2 Singaporean families between January and May 2018. On 10 May 2018, Zin was hired by an Indian-born financial controller who immigrated and settled in Singapore, and she began working for her employer, who lived at Chua Chu Kang with his wife and 2 teenage daughters. We will call this Indian family Sashi family, so Zinmar ends up living with them at Block 791, Chua Chu Kang. For the most part of her job with the Sashi's family was pretty standard, like washing dishes, cleaning the home, and looking after the kids. The family treated her very well and decently, just like anyone else, and there was no violence. But then everything changed, about 16 days into her job. When a visitor came to stay with the family, the visitor was 70-years-old mother-in-law, traveled from India to Singapore to come live with her son-in-law and his kin for a month. Her treatment of Zin was an entirely different story. According to what Zin Marnowe herself said, this lady was tough and even violent as well with her. Zin had to be perfect in her work, or else she gets scolded, and it wasn't just words. The mother-in-law got physically abusive. Reports say it first starts with verbal attacks, but then escalates to using objects to target Zinmar. The mother-in-law believed that Zinmar was ineffective and could not follow simple instructions. So Zin would first be slapped, sometimes 3 times a day, and then it would get worse, when different objects would be used to punish her for small mistakes. There were a few incidents that really show what Zinmar had to go through. On one occasion, while Zin was massaging the elderly woman, she might use too much force. We don't know she did this purposely or not, but she ended up getting a hard slap. On another occasion, in the kitchen, Zin had switched the stove on wrongly, which accidentally caused the elderly woman to have her hand slightly burnt. This caused the woman so mad that she pulled Zin's hands close to the fire. On a third occasion, when Zin was cutting the older woman's toenails, and Zinmar accidentally cut the skin with a nail, that made the woman so angry and mad that the woman allegedly kicked her in the chest. Mr. Sashi, the son-in-law, he knew that these both ladies were not getting along, but he didn't think much about it. He never saw Zin Marnowe complain for anything. She just kept doing her job as if nothing was wrong. She used to wake up at 5:30 a.m. She would do her chores and go to bed at 11 p.m. She was getting paid well, about $450 a month, and never showed any signs of distress. So the family just thought it was some issue with the old lady being too picky, but they never tried to stepping in their issues and separating them, which turned out to be a big mistake. On 25th of June 2018, it started like any other day. Zin got up and made breakfast. Then kids went to school and parents went to their work. Zin Marnowe was left alone with the mother-in-law, which was not easy for Zin Marnowe, because mother-in-law always nagging her for each small mistakes and hitting her. There were normal house chores given to Zin, but mother-in-law was like a dictator with her hard demands, which used to make an easy chore hard for Zin. That day, the sequence of events began with Zin. That first elderly woman asked her to clean her bedroom. After cleaning her room, the elderly woman, who was resting on the couch and watching TV, asked her to make her a cup of coffee. Zin did as she was told, but elderly woman was not happy with her work, because she thinks Zinmar doesn't follow simple instruction properly, and she is too slow in her duties. Elderly woman made a significant remark. She threatened to contact Zin's agent and send her back to Myanmar. This comment was the tipping point for Zin because, for Zin, her job was everything. Zin was emotionally triggered by the threat, especially since she had already incurred a debt of $300 to come to Singapore to work, because the agency pays up front for her expenses like paperwork, passport, health card, and agency deduct this from maid salaries. Being sent back would not only be a loss of income for Zin Mar, but also an inability to pay her debt. Faced with tremendous pressure and constant abuse, Zin reached her limit meanwhile. So, a fit of anger, Zin went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. Zin attacked and stabbed the woman multiple times while the elderly woman was watching television. The elderly victim, 70-year-old, died as a result of acute hemorrhage resulting from the 26 stab wounds, some of which penetrated her heart and lungs. It was only after the woman collapsed that Zin came to the realization of what she had done. In a state of shock, she saw that the woman was dead and she knew she had to flee. During this commotion, hearing the screams and noise, the neighbor of Sashi family suspecting something has happened in the house. The victim was pronounced dead at about 3:29 p.m. after a neighbor, who heard the screams, discovered her body and the arrival of paramedics. Police were also contacted to investigate the case, which was classified as murder, and a manhunt was set out to look for Zin, who was their prime suspect. Evidence was also collected from the flat, which was cordoned off for more than 12 hours. Neighbors who interacted with the family were shocked to hear about the gruesome murder, and stated that the family, who all lived here for at least 17 years, were generally friendly, and described the maid as a timid and small-sized person. Zin Mar Noe, who escaped the flat with an Easy Link card and some cash, wandered around Singapore for approximately 5 hours. In what appeared to be a state of confusion and distress over the gravity of her actions, she utilized various made of public transportation, including buses, to avoid staying in one place for a long time. Her physical and mental exhaustion was evident. Ultimately, Zin made the decision to retrieve her passport and leave the country as a way to escape the situation. She held a taxi to her employment agency, leaving some money and a blood-stained note in the back seat. Initially, she denied that these items were hers, but the taxi driver found this particularly strange, especially in the light of the police announcement about a maid on the run for murder. Police located her in just 5 hours into their investigation. Upon her arrival at the agency, the staff, already informed of the situation, contacted the police and she was arrested. Zin was charged with murder 2 days later on 27th of June 2018. The case was extensively reported in the Indian media and Singaporean media and other countries due to the high-profile nature of the case. After the completion of the autopsy at the mortuary of the Health Sciences Authority, the victim's son-in-law retrieved the body for funeral preparations, and more than 30 relatives and friends were present at the victim's funeral at Mandai Crematorium. On 9 November 2021, 3 years after her arrest, Zin Mar Noe officially stood trial for murder. A month before the beginning of Zin's trial, in October 2021, the courts issued a gag order to prohibit the local media and newspapers in Singapore from continuing to report the name of the victim, in order to protect the identity of one of the trial witnesses, who was below 18 years old and a family member of the victim. Also, Zin Mar Noe's age was corrected from 23 to 17 after the authorities got wind of her false declaration in her passport, and a bone age test at Tan Tock Seng Hospital confirmed that Zin was, most likely, 17 years old at the time she murdered the deceased. Even though she was a minor when murdering the victim, Zin was tried as an adult. The prosecution's case was based on Zin's confession. Zin initially claimed that 2 dark-skinned people entered the flat to attack and stab the victim to death. But subsequently, Zin was changing her story, and she gave numerous different accounts about the crime. She nonetheless, in the end, admitted to killing the victim and also raised the instances where she was abused by the deceased for some time prior to the stabbing. Although the family of the deceased testified that Zin looked normal the day before the murder, and stated that they had a cordial relationship with the maid, Zin stated as a result of the threat of being sent back home and fear of incurring debts, she was triggered and lost control when killing the victim, and confessed to killing the elderly woman. Zin's main defense at the trial was diminished responsibility. Dr. Tommy Tan, the defense's psychiatrist, testified on behalf of Zin during the trial. He was of the opinion that Zin suffered from adjustment disorder with mixed anxiety and depressed mood, which were sufficient to impair her mental responsibility at the time of the crime, and that she was not fully conscious of what she was doing, since she was in a dissociative state, and could not control or remember her acts when she was stabbing the victim. So they were trying to show that her mental health at the time should be a big factor. To get to the bottom of Zin's mental state during the incident, the prosecution called in Dr. Alias Liho, a government psychiatrist. He had a different take on things. He argued that Zin wasn't suffering from any diminished responsibility at the time of the murder, stating that she had full knowledge of her actions and never had any abnormality of the mind at the time of the stabbing. Plus, the court noticed that Zin was able to tolerate these instances of mistreatment, up until the threat of being sent back home, which triggered her to stab the old woman, and also Zin had made some calculated moves to plan her escape right after the crime. On 18th of May, 2023, after an 11-day trial that dragged on for more than a year, Justice Andre Maniam, the trial judge presiding over Zin Marnowe's case, delivered the verdict. He found 22-year-old Zin Marnowe guilty of murder and convicted her as charged. Upon her conviction for murder, Zin Marnowe faced a possible death sentence or life imprisonment with caning. However, Zin Marnowe cannot be caned as she is a woman. Since Zin was 17 years old when she murdered the elderly woman, she would not be eligible for the death penalty. The only other possible sentence she could receive in this case was life imprisonment. So on 4 July 2023, 22-year-old Zin Marnowe was officially sentenced to life imprisonment by the High Court. And that is the end of Zin Marnowe's case. Even though the treatment she received from elderly woman Overly was harsh, but it doesn't justify what Zin did. If you liked the video, please don't forget to like, share, and please subscribe to the channel for more videos. Thank you.